Um, Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Tell the Others. I'm joined today by retired California Highway Patrol Officer Kevin Briggs. Kevin has quite an interesting career, and not just doing highway patrol, but there's some interesting bits from his career that he'll tell you about shortly. Thanks, Kevin, for being with us. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to be here. This is great. We're able to do this.
Yeah, especially given the current circumstances of everyone being stuck at home, that we can actually
Right. I think this is
meet.
the only way we can do this.
Correct. It is. So for all of our listeners, people who maybe haven't seen your TED Talk or who have never seen you speak before, could you just share a little bit about your background, your career history, and a little bit of what you've been up to during your life?
Sure. I'm Kevin Briggs. Just very quick before I get into the California Highway Patrol part, right out of high school, I went into the United States Army. And I want to talk eventually about trauma and what happens to folks. And we're going to talk
Yes.
about behavioral health, mental illness,
Yes.
and what we can do. But when we talk about trauma, at age 20, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer in the Army in Germany, way far away from my family and everything. So I had
Wow.
3 operations and went all through that. And you talk about when we talk about our manhood and such, it's a hit. It's a very brutal hit. And I was just 20 years old, turned 21 the day I landed back here in the United States. But I went off through that, did 3 years in the Army, got out and started working in state corrections and worked at San Quentin State Prison for a couple of years. And then in 1990, I went into the Highway Patrol. And after a few years, I got back to my hometown, which is Marin County. I started working on the Golden Gate Bridge, 1994-ish. And I had crossed the bridge hundreds of times before going into San Francisco, because Marin County connects to San Francisco via that Golden Gate Bridge. But I had no idea the number of suicidal folks that came to that bridge every year. But I found out very, very fast. And I had no training. I didn't know what to say, what not to say. So it was brutal.
Wow.
But I learned very quickly that if I wanted to work on that bridge, I'm going to get these calls. So I kind of developed myself and spoke to a lot of people, a lot of senior people, both who work on the bridge and with the Highway Patrol, and started to do my own research. I wanted to become better at this. And, some people say, well, why did you want to work on the bridge and do that? It's because I think the look in people's eyes that are standing over this 4-foot rail, pedestrian rail, on this I-beam that's over on the other side. And then it's just 220 feet down, long fall. But to look in their eyes and see that most of the time, these folks want to live, but they just can't get past this particular crisis or a series of crises that have gone on in their lives. So it's very, very sad to see that. So I wanted to become better at this craft of negotiations. And it was some years before I was able to get some training, some crisis intervention training, CIT, what we call it here, which I think is big out there also. And then way towards the later part of my career, almost to retirement, to when I went through the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, through their crisis negotiator school, which helped tremendously. But I wish I would have had that training way earlier.
Seriously, yeah.
So I mean, I'm doing it all backwards here. But welcome to the Highway Patrol. Yeah. I don't want to dog or say things about the Highway Patrol, but that's how it is. So
it's a government agency, like it's a department. So it's going to be lots of red tape.
But along the way, a lot of things happened. I had some stents put in my heart. I'm pretty sure the guy that my heart surgeon went to school before he put the stents in my heart. He didn't have to do it backwards like I did. But a lot of things happened along the way. Diagnosed with depression. So I take a couple of different medications for that, and going through the mental health area or arena. And going through my general practitioner and kind of being denied to say, hey, doc, I've had some things going and some trauma in my life. I'd like to see a psychiatrist. And him not telling me no, but saying, hey, Kevin, unless you're actively suicidal, which I told him I was not, I don't recommend you do this. So I make that very clear to folks when I give presentations around the world now, to tell them, boy, you got to ante up for yourself. And say, you know what? No, I am going to do this. And thank God I did go see a psychiatrist, and it really helped.
And so talking about it. Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, thanks for
But
your life story in 2 seconds.
the Fast and Furious.
The fast recap. That's good. I think it's interesting too to talk about our, our own mental health. And I think it's important. I went through a period of depression and was suicidal periods in my early 20s. And I agree with you that I think it's important to talk about in a public setting. Like, one, I think to reduce the stigma, but also I think to show people, I guess, like, this is what depression looks like. Like, it's not
Right.
necessarily I'm just laying in bed and like you can't get out of your jammies. Like, that's a part of it, but like that's not what it always looks like for everyone. That being on and then I was on medication for years, and being on medication definitely saved my life. And I think whenever you hear people saying like, oh, I don't want them to go on medication, or I don't want to go on medication, I'm always just like, but you guys, it's here. Like, it's
Yeah.
designed for this. Like, we're so lucky to be alive in this period of time where these medications exist. So I think that's really cool that you talk about it. I'm with you on that. I talk about it as well. I think it's important.
Yeah. And and I particularly, as you probably do also, I don't discuss the medications
Yeah.
because I don't want people running out. Well, it worked for Kevin Briggs, but
Yeah.
well, I still had hard times with things, and I still
Yeah.
have bad mental health days. But I tell
Sure.
folks, if it goes on for a couple of weeks, man, we got to get in and see somebody.
Yeah.
And we talk about men. They're the worst as far as getting help. We man up, we take it in, we suck it up. I sucked it up for years, for decades, of
Totally.
seeing different things and going through different things. And I
Totally.
steadily was going downhill. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to. I would go to work and be fine. Everything would be great. But when I came
Mm-hmm.
home, I didn't want to do a thing. I could sit on the couch for days at a time.
Totally.
And I'm thinking, for one, nobody's going to believe this. And
Yeah.
two, what can they possibly do about it? How can somebody
Yeah.
go to work and be great, but then
Yeah.
come home and do nothing?
Yeah.
But that is absolutely the truth.
Yeah.
And when I started to talk to people in the field, they said, oh, hey, man, that does happen.
Mm.
So we're working, and it's been a number of years. I'm still a work in progress, as most people are,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to do it. And I explain my story when I talk to folks and say, this is what
Mm-hmm.
happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But there is help out there. But boy, we got to start with ourselves,
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
especially when it
100%.
comes to helping others. Yeah, but it has to start here. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah. What do you think in, knowing kind of the, that you said trauma, and knowing that you've had, I mean, the cancer and the time in the military, and then going through everything you've been through working on the bridge. I know a lot, for me as a trauma clinician, that vicarious trauma is a thing. That's something that
Right.
we who deal with the public that have lots of trauma, we have to kind of protect ourselves from and always be mindful of. And I think it's always interesting that those of us who get into a helping profession are usually very, very sensitive, empathic people. And it's almost like in some ways we're the worst people for the job, because we feel so deeply and we're so like connected to people, and we get teary and that kind of thing. But I think in the reality of it is, it's the greatest thing that the empathic, sensitive hearts are the ones that like to help people and do this work, because we care so deeply about people. But it makes me think what that would have been like patrolling the bridge and encountering people in so much pain. And I know those faces. I know exactly when you said that look in their eyes. I've seen that in clients' eyes hundreds of times. But what do you think the impact of that is? Like, because do you think the impact of doing that for, decades has played a role in your depression, and has played a role in how it's sort of impacted your chemistry and your, yeah.
I think so, just as it would in your role.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm looking at someone, and now many times it's not over the rail. Maybe it's on the sidewalk. Maybe it's
Mm,
in their car,
mm, mm,
in the
mm.
parking lots, and they're writing a note, or they're making a recording. So is that note hey, wish you guys were here, this is a great time, like most people would be there? Or is it a suicide note? He's telling you goodbye, I love you, please don't
Mhm,
think ill of me, or whatever that may
mhm,
be.
mhm,
But
mhm,
to look in someone's eyes, and I look at this when I'm teaching young officers,
mhm,
if they want to do this type of work,
mhm,
wherever it's at, if I'm presenting, or even when I was employed with the Highway Patrol. And I would tell them, unfortunately, I'm going to bare bones it and give it to you how it is up here. You're going to lose people. And that's just the way it is. And it sucks. It really does. But I want you to think about how many you helped. And I don't say saved, because I didn't rush into a burning building and pull people out or anything like that. But we helped them on a very dark day. And I think and it's not just me doing this, there's people all over the world doing this kind of thing. I mean, but I tell them, if you're going to work down on the bridge, you are going to get these calls until that barrier is completed. But you are going to help a hell of a lot more than you will lose. I'm hoping that you don't lose anybody. You got to have it in the back of your head that that individual falls. And I teach them another thing too. And it's not a secret or anything else, but I tell them, if somebody jumps, if you see it's inevitable, don't watch them fall, because that's what's going to be in your head the rest of your life. And the ones that I have lost, I have watched because I want to mark the body. It's a whole lot of different things, but I don't want to lose that body. It's very important to get it. And we do lose quite a few bodies once they hit that water, whether they sank, whether they're washed out to sea, whatever that may be. So we mark it. And I want to mark it and have the Coast Guard pick them up. So to get down to the bare bones of this, it's terrible. It is. But I want these folks to be prepared. And I would tell that to anybody in any circumstance. If you're talking to someone, even if it's over the phone, and for some reason you sense that it's not going well, and they try to pull those earphones out, whatever it may be, just so that's not in your head. And then if it does start bothering you, you're not sleeping at night, whatever that may be, you're angry at your significant other now a lot more than you used to be, or these different things that occur to us, get some help. It's very, very important, because I tell them time and time again, it starts with us. And part of my therapy is, I'm going to show you. She's sleeping. Come here. Come. It's all right. She's lazy. You can see. You can see her. That's Bella.
Hello.
My first small dog ever. And they are, can you come and see me? Good girl. Come.
Oh my God, she's so cute.
Good girl. So she's part of my therapy.
Yeah.
My first small dog ever. I know.
She's Chihuahua something?
No, just pure Chihuahua.
Just pure Chihuahua. Oh, she looks like she has markings of like Rottweiler Dachshund or something.
See, I wanted here you go. I wanted a Doberman, but I'm gone a lot. And I got people take care of her.
Yeah.
And she is so cool. But that's what I want to tell people too, is how are you taking care of yourself? That's one aspect of it.
Yeah.
Just by petting your dog. And I know some people like cats, or I toured Montana for 8 days in September. And there's a lot of horses out there, and people love their horses. So whatever that you have or into, going to the gym, if people like to do that, whatever it is. So that's a big part of it too, is not just our job. And when I talk to clinicians, I really emphasize this, because you said it yourself, they don't see it, or they think, maybe some may think they're above it. It's not going to happen to me. This is what I've been trained to do for many, many years. I'm going to tell you, And I did have, it happens on quite a few instances where I'm talking about it, and all of a sudden it hits them. I can see it in the audience. And one lady, she was over 65 years old, still practicing as a clinician, very lovely lady. She came up to me after I talked about compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, and she said, "Thank you for pointing that out. That's the nail that really hit it on the head. I'm going to get some help." She's been doing this for decades. And they see it, they know it, but it takes something else to make a spark to make them 100%. Get up, because you have the right to be happy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So if you're helping others, get some help, so you can help and continue to help those folks too.
Totally agree. I think I will dip in and out of therapy for the rest of my life. Like, I do like chunks of work, like something happens, like when I got pregnant with my first child, that stirred up a whole bunch of stuff, like how life transitions do. Did a chunk of work then my dad was unwell last year, did a chunk of work then. I just sort of do little nuggets of work with my therapist here, and I just think it's so important. And I just think, how can I be a good clinician and like helping other people one, if I'm not clear on what my stuff is, my crap from my past, my baggage, my self-limiting beliefs, whatever,
Right.
how can I fully help someone? But then also, how do I hold all of this stuff that people come and share, all of their pain, all of their trauma, right? Especially being a trauma specialist, and sexual abuse specialist. So I'm hearing so much pain and suffering.
Right.
I have to have somewhere to put that, right? To process that with someone. And that's why that's a large part of my therapy is just kind of, sometimes I'll sit and cry about a story I've heard that is really horrific. Or, something that I just can't stop thinking about. A client might tell me a really horrific story from, say, childhood or something that I just can't stop thinking about because it's so painful and so just horrific. And I need to have a place to dump and just kind of go, this was so horrible, and hearing about it. And then what happens is you refill your cup, and then it's like you then have capacity again to go and help. And the thing, I guess, with your work though is it's so intense and so extreme. Whereas me not being in crisis, I'm hearing about stories and traumas that have happened, a month ago, a year ago, 20 years ago. But for you, that visceral, like just so intense. How did you, I have so many questions, but I'll go with the first one I thought of. That first person, the first suicidal call you got. So someone, I guess the radio calls in and says, we have someone who's standing, parked, sitting, whatever, on the bridge. What were you going through? How many months, years, weeks were you on the job at this point? And what was going through your mind as you pulled up?
I had been on the job for several years, but not very long in Marin County because, of course,
Okay.
California Highway Patrol, it's all throughout the state. I had
Yeah.
been over by Oakland. Most people have heard of Oakland, California.
Yep. Yeah.
I was in that area in Hayward, a town over there.
Oh my gosh, I have
Marin,
family there. My sister's
oh, do you?
brother's from there. Yeah,
Okay.
I know Hayward
A
well.
lot of nice
Yeah,
folks,
a
but
lot of
Hayward
nice
has
folks. Oh, it's
has
rough.
a lot of
Oh
shootings
yeah.
and a lot of
Hayward
stuff
is
goes on
rough.
in Hayward. So my
Yes.
first 4 or 5 years were spent in Hayward. So I learned a hell of a, it's way different than Marin County.
Oh
But
yeah.
anyway,
Oh yeah. Marin, for people listening, Marin is more of, so for Melbourne suburbs, it would be like Toorak or Beverly Hills, or yeah,
it's
Marin
quite
is
different,
very nice. Yeah,
quite different.
Marin's very nice.
So
Yeah.
I get back to Marin, and people didn't want to work on the bridge very much. I mean, I don't know why, but I don't do well in the heat. So I like to go down south. It's the southern end of Marin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually cold there a lot. It's very, very cold on the bridge. So I started working there, and I received this call, and nobody had spoke to me about this. I didn't know what to say, what to do. Back then I was still in a car instead of the motorcycle. So I arrive on scene, and there's this, we get the call, and it's just like it is. It says, if they know what the gender is, say a woman over the female, and we use light posts, which run up and down the bridge. So they'll give me a light post number, an odd, they're odd numbers on that side of the bridge, and they'll say 33 or whatever that is. So I arrive on scene, there she is over the rail, and I walk up and I go, what in the heck? I have no clue of how to handle this. Way different than now. Not that
Oh my
I
God.
don't think you become an expert, but what can I say? How do I even approach?
Yeah.
So I walk up and I just, hi, it's gonna sound funny, but it was really tragic on my part and her part. She did come back over, but it took some time. But when I walked up, the part of me, I was still in police mode, like,
yes,
almost, what are you doing over there? You get hurt and you're trespassing.
You're not supposed to do that.
Like,
don't do that. Yeah.
Like, in my mind, so what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
So, but then it kicked in that no, she's suffering. So we talked for a while, and she was on the verge of being homeless, and drugs were involved. I don't believe they were involved at that particular time, but for years. And we talked for not that long, half hour, something in that range. But she wanted to come back over, but she was looking for a reason, And I went into all the things that I thought back then. Wow. And I remember things that I would say back then were, well, how could you do this to your family? Kind of stuff. And way different than what I would do now. Don't say things like that. But,
yeah.
But things, and she looked, and I think she saw a lot of empathy in me. And
Yeah.
maybe she had pity on me, so she
Yeah.
came back over.
Little did she know she
So
was your first.
I'm like, I don't know.
uh, yeah. And then what did you feel like after? I mean, when she crossed back over the barrier and kind of came back to the land of the living, did you feel a bit like, I mean, I imagine the adrenaline and the cortisol that would have been pumping through your body, I'm tipping you probably would have started shaking after she came across. Like, what did you then, and once you kind of got her safe or kind of handed her over to whoever is the next point of call in the protocol, what did you then, when you were sitting there with your thoughts, what was going through your head? Like, just holy shit, I can't believe that happened? Or like, what were
Right.
you thinking?
So I felt that I did a very inadequate job. I was very lucky
Okay.
that she came back over and said, you know what, if I want to work down here, I better get my act together. Because if this is
Yeah.
going to occur, I want to be a lot more or better
Prepared. Yeah.
prepared. So I
Yeah.
started talking to some senior officers who had worked down there and some folks who worked at the Golden Gate Bridge, and I wanted to study more. So I just started learning more about human nature and why folks would get to that level. How did they get to that level? What could I do? Here I am dressed in a uniform, which isn't the best approach to make to someone who was in crisis. But I came up with my own things over the years, and it really helped. And that's what I teach now, like not to look at someone if they do go, but how do we get past that if we do lose someone, and what, for ourselves. So a couple things I do before I retired is when I would walk up to someone, just not to walk up to them directly, but actually stay back 10, 15 feet. And I would just raise my hand, hi. And they could see I'm in a uniform. Say, hi, I'm Kevin. I want to personalize everything. If they'll allow me to use their first name, that's big. But hi, I'm Kevin. Is it okay if I come up and speak with you for a while? And to get their permission. Because many folks look at us in law enforcement and they think, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Here we go. He's going to come out and start demanding things. This is not the place, time and place for that. I want to get their permission to come up. And when they do, of course, we're keeping officer safety always in the back of our minds. But to find out what's really been going on, and if they're speaking, I'm shutting up. I'll use one of our active listening skills. It's called minimal encouragers. And it's just when they're talking to me, I'm just going, wow, really? Is that right? Let them speak. That's the biggest thing, is people want to project onto them and tell them, well, you know what you should have done. And I'd stay clear of anything like that. If they're speaking, I'm just going to listen. The longer they're speaking, the better. They're venting, they're getting everything out. I'm getting more information, gathering information. So some things I avoid are, you should calm down. I understand, things will get better. Because if you're over that rail, you're in a very, very dark place. And I'm telling you, you know what you should have done? Oh, I'm placing blame on you. You're going to shut down. It's going to go bad, or to tell you, I understand. Well, I've had some things. I've been in some crashes. I've had some head injuries. I had the heart trauma. I had the cancer. We've all had some things, but I don't talk about those with folks because it's about them. And it's not the Kevin Briggs story.
Totally.
But if they come up with, you don't know what it's like to have cancer. Well, I did. And maybe we can talk about that and share our crappy experiences,
Yeah.
But I will tell you, commonalities create comfort. So those are some things that I try to stay clear of. And why? Why'd you do that? Why are you here? So I can't make things better. Don't even try to. But I can certainly listen. And maybe I think with maybe like a horse with the blinders on, maybe I can open it up a little bit. And I will tell them, and I think this is very important, is I will tell them, when you come back, not if, but when you come back over that rail, I have to place you in handcuffs, but that's only because that's our policy. You're not going to be arrested. You're not going to get a ticket. And then I'm going to take you down to, more than likely, it's San Francisco General Hospital, but wherever we need to go. And that's what we do with folks. And that's it. I don't do follow-up. I don't believe in that. I don't think it's right. Hey, remember me? I'm the guy that no, I didn't save anybody.
Yeah.
But I also, it's important that for me, I want them to come back on their own. So I don't reach over and grab them, because I think it takes a hell of a lot of courage to go over that rail to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think it takes even more to come back and face everything, because I'm not going to be able to fix it, nor would I. I would be a foolish person, and I think they'd be all over me if I said that I could. So it's not right.
I agree with you on that, I think it's, I mean, obviously I've never done any sort of bridge patrol, I have no idea what I would do in those situations, but when I'm thinking about it now, I think that makes sense. Because one of the things in your TED Talk, you said you shook someone's hand and then they jumped.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I wonder why he didn't, when he shook the guy's hand, why he didn't pull him. And then I thought, and I was having this whole sort of thought conversation with myself, and I was like, well, maybe they trained them not to do that because he could have pulled him with him, and then I was thinking about it and I was like, I don't think I would have either. I think I would have, shook hands, but not done that. So in some ways you see videos of that where there's someone who's suicidal, right, and then people go and like tackle them. And I agree with you, because I think it's a very important moment for them to choose to live and to make a conscious choice to get that close as well, to be so close, and to then make the conscious choice to no, I'm not going to do it. I choose life today. I think is a really like beautiful moment that you're depriving them of, I think, by tackling them or, pulling them over or whatever. I think, yeah, I'm with you. That makes total sense, even though I have no experience with it and you do, but it makes total sense. But I guess, what was that like, those times where you maybe had an opportunity? Did it cross your mind sometimes to bear hug them and tackle them across? Or, when you shook that guy's hand, did it cross your mind of like?
Every single time that I'm up there with them. Because that gentleman that shook my hand, he shook my hand 3 times. And on the 3rd time, he said, Kevin, thank you very much, but I have to go. And he jumped. And it just breaks your heart. I think it's fine that officers, if they want to try that and do that, that's fine. I want folks to come back on their own. I think they have to want to be better. If they don't want to be better, then I think it's going to come back to another crisis. We know if we can get them past this crisis many, many times, they won't attempt it again. But I think they have a much better chance of success if they do this on their own. Yes, we could grab them, and I God's grace to everybody that are officers or civilians, whoever it is, that has been on a bridge or a tall building, whatever it is, and did grab folks and bring them back, that I have no issues with that. But just for me and how I operate, I want folks to come back on their own, because it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. And I think if you have the courage to come back over that rail and start a rebirth, a second life, then I think you can go back in your head and think that, you know what, that was a very, very tough day. Today isn't even as bad. So I can get through today because I got past that day. So
Out
that's
of
my
all
reason.
Yeah, and I think it's totally logical. Out of all of the people and the stories that you've heard, I mean, you have probably heard, you're like an accidental counselor, like you're an accidental therapist. Like, you've heard so many stories and so much trauma. Because I know you don't get to that point of wanting to check out. You don't get to that point unless you've experienced some sort of trauma. So out of all of the stories, what are some, I don't know, what's something that sort of sticks with you? Because like, I know when I think about all the clients I've worked with, I have a handful that, I will remember for the rest of my life, either from the stories, or most of the time, I think the ones that stick with me is the adversity that people are able to overcome, that your mind is blown sometimes when you hear stories of just, wow. And also sometimes like, no wonder you're sitting on the side of a bridge, man. Like, I would be too if I had gone through all that. Like, my Lord, like, that is just so painful. What are kind of, I don't know, I guess a few of the ones that really stand out to you, either the ones that you shared in the TED Talk or other ones that are the ones that are like just really touched you, or really, I don't know, are those handful that you are really memorable for you?
It's the ones, and even I know one gentleman that I didn't even get a chance to speak with. He jumped, but then he had in his pocket he had just been released from jail for child sexual abuse. So he was, I guess, very, very embarrassed about it. And he came up to the bridge. We didn't even get a chance to speak with him, and over he jumps. So things like that, the trauma that they inflict on someone else.
Yes.
So now that they got caught, the embarrassment and everything else that's going to come out because of that. But the trauma that has been placed onto other people from early on, you know, the child abuse, the child neglect, and the different things. It's so hard to work around and work past that and to say, you know what, you can have brighter days, you can have better days. And then the folks, of course, who are homeless and been homeless for a very, very long time, and they were staying with different family members, but finally that was used up and they didn't know where to go. So they went up on the bridge. It's how do you so-called fix something or do that in a half an hour to an hour to 2 hours, whatever that may be. So it's just brutal to hear these folks, and you almost want to cry when you're in front of them. And you know things can get better, but you know, man, it's going to take a long time before things get better for this individual.
Yeah.
Today is a bad day. You're going to have worse days. You're going to have some good days. But just, it's very difficult. But we try to take this sometimes a minute at a time. And even when you're off the bridge, when I'm talking to folks, we're going to have bad days. But if we can have these little goals, okay, my goal today is to get up and make my bed, number one, to get up and have that cup of coffee, to take a foot out the door. Because for me, I have this anxiety, and sometimes it's very difficult for me to leave the house. So if I can push myself to take that little dog out for a walk, that could change things, you know, for that day. So it's difficult. And I've seen, sure, you've seen these types of things all the time. But what can we offer to folks that maybe they haven't thought of? What's that glimmer? What are they responsible for? What brings purpose to their life? And I think that's a huge one, is everybody needs a purpose. If we look at it now and count every single person out there who's working wanted a vacation, but they certainly don't want it now. Now that what's going on and we're all supposed to be in our homes and not out there, I'm tired of sitting home. I'm tired of watching TV. I've gained 10 pounds. I want to go back to work. Who was saying I want to go back to work a few months ago? I want to go to work.
Totally.
But now everybody's, they're rioting there. They want to go back to work.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I think just that piece about what to say and what not to say, because I think maybe that's something helpful that we could share, because I don't know if everyone has encountered, surely everyone encounters someone who gets that low. Maybe they don't know that they're suicidal at the moment, but they maybe know that they're very sad or very low. And people will often say, you know, clients will say to me like, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to tell them. And I always say, you just go back to validation. You validate their feelings, you validate their emotions, and you just mirror back exactly what you're saying. You mirror back to them what they say, and just be really fully present and just hold space. Like, cause I always say like, I can't fix anyone. Same as you. Like, even if you pulled them over, you know, or they came back to the other side, you're not fixing, you're not saving anyone. I always say what it feels like I do in my job is I hold space and I bear witness, and I am just present to your pain and your story, and I validate your experience. But in the moment, because what you have dealt with is so critical moments, what do you say is like, so your favorite three, so maybe we narrow it down to that. So people who are listening, if they encounter someone either who's suicidal or who's just having a really low day, what are you kind of alluded to it earlier, I think, by saying the active listening stuff, but what would you say are your three kind of do this steps?
Here's three that would really help someone who's suffering and going through some stuff. If you're there, be honored that you get to be part of this, to help someone. But you said it, you said one of them there is to validate what you're going through, simply by listening, shutting your mouth, because we all talk too much. I go, shut up. But to say, you know, wow, that sounds really tough. You just validated them. That has a lot of weight. To normalize what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? Because people, in my opinion, people who get to this spot to where they're suicidal, they think they're the only ones going through this. Nobody else has gone all through this, and they have no way out.
Mm-hmm.
But to come up with something like, you know what? Wow, that sounds really tough. You know, if anybody was going through all those different things you are, they'd probably be thinking about suicide, or that would have crossed their mind. I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
normal feeling. To
Mm-hmm.
validate and to normalize what they're going through,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think is huge.
Yeah.
And then to let them know that you're there for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for you. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
friend, a colleague, you
Mm-hmm.
have my phone number. You can call me 24 hours a day. If I can't pick up right then, I will as soon as I can.
Mm-hmm.
That way they know you're in your corner, and you
Mm-hmm.
explain things to them. You know what? Maybe people who are going through all this would be thinking about suicide. So it's not some obscure, weird thought. Doesn't
Yeah.
make right or wrong. It's what's going on. It's how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get some help for that.
Mm-hmm.
But to validate, to normalize, and to be there for them,
Yeah.
that'll go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it sounds so simple, but it is so powerful. And you can see it too. Like, um, when you look in someone's eyes and you start validating them, especially people who maybe have never experienced much validation in their life, as soon as they start to feel it, you can almost like see them soften and just see them just ease. Like you can just see their body relax, like just feeling safe, I guess, that they're feeling safe in the presence of another person.
Right.
What was that like for you then with the ones that you did, the ones that did jump? Because I know as a clinician, like we definitely hold a lot of responsibility and a lot of blame that a lot of clinicians and anyone can, even if you're not a clinician, but or in a professional sense, if you lose a family member or whatever, to blame yourself and think I could have done more, this is my fault. So with the first one, when you lost the first person to the last one, what did you kind of learn through that period of how you take it on, don't take it on, blame yourself, don't blame yourself? Like what were sort of the dialogues in your head after that happened?
There is a lot of blame.
Mm.
There's the what could I have done better? But I want to go back on that and rethink this and go, okay, maybe what could I have done different?
Mm-hmm.
But also we help so many more than actually do
Yeah.
that act. So that
Mm-hmm.
helps us. But that is in there, and we think, you know what? The big kicker is they make the call. I was there for them. I did the best that I could the time
Mm-hmm.
that I was there. That's how I look at it. I did the best that I could the time when I was there. They make that final call. So I think that really helps folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's always going to be there. Is yeah, what could I have done? Now, if it starts affecting me in my sleep, and I'm having very difficult time through the days, I'm going to get some help, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what's the bad part is that's why we lose a lot of officers and firemen and
Mm-hmm.
mental health professionals. In the States, suicide is still going up. Traffic accident fatalities are going down. Murder rates going down, but the suicide rate is going up. So we have a lot of work to do. We really do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think that knowing this is the best that I could do with the knowledge that I
Yeah.
had, the training that I had, and the knowledge
Yeah.
that I gained from that person,
Mm-hmm.
they made that call.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I always say the line that I always say to, especially um, clients who've lost a family member to suicide, the line that I love is, you made the best decision at the time with the information that you had. And so if
Yeah.
you chose to not answer your call the night that they did it or whatever, that you didn't answer your phone that night, and then you blame yourself that if I'd taken the call, I could have talked them out of it or whatever. You didn't know that, you made the
Right.
best decision at the time with the information that you have, and giving yourself that grace that you're not a, psychic, and you knew it was going to happen. Just on that, when you just mentioned, law enforcement and other people who um, it takes a toll and they end up possibly trying to hurt themselves. What did you notice in terms of the statistics of what percentage and ratio were men and women of the folks that you spoke to on the bridge? Did you notice that there was a larger percentage of men or women, or older or younger, or was there a Yeah. Is there a demographic that stuck out to you?
Yeah, the vast majority white males.
Huh.
I would say 35 plus back
Mm-hmm.
some years ago. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
getting younger. They're getting younger
Mm,
and younger nowadays. I think the social media has a lot to do with it. I really do. But it's kind of almost the same demographics as we see in the United States, the
yeah.
54 to 65-ish folks,
Mm-hmm.
but white males.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. And what does that make you want to do then with, with men's mental health? Because whenever I get a new client that's a man, I'm always just like thrilled because I'm just so excited that they took that step to get help and didn't wait till it was too late. Um, but what, like, does this make you, after seeing like so many people in pain? I mean, I would imagine that's part of why you do all the public speaking you do, is to bring awareness and
Right.
to raise the stigma and stuff. But what has that shifted for you, or how has that impacted you, I guess, in seeing that particular demographic and being in that demographic? I mean, I know you're not 35, but being in that, being
I'm
in
a little
that
older.
little older than that, but being in that demographic and connecting with that of, the shame that comes with reaching out for help.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah. How did that impact you?
For one, it took me years to go and seek help for my own
Mhm.
diagnosis of depression, and seeing, having my own son, who he is 19 now, when he was 14 was suicidal, and going through
Mm.
that with him to get help. And it was pretty crappy, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
for him, how it went through, because the clinician did not do things right, in my opinion. He
Mhm.
he assumed, after speaking with Kevin for 10-15 minutes, that he was not suicidal. So instead of validating and normalizing what's going on with him, he just came out and said, "Well, you're not suicidal, right?" It was horrible, horrible. But I find this time and time again in places is many clinicians are not trained in suicide assessment.
Yes.
So when you're talking to clinicians and you say that, and some of them get all riled up, who do you think you are? I'm telling you,
Mhm.
this is the
Mhm.
truth.
Mhm.
And speaking with
Mhm.
many of them, it's still, I don't know if there's any states in the union that
Mhm.
require suicide assessment training. Maybe just a
Mhm.
couple now, but it is
Mhm.
getting better. Most of the folks I get to talk to have and do, well, they all care, but they
Mhm.
are getting that training. So it is a turnaround. But
Mhm.
um, just to get out there. And it's one of the big reasons I left the patrol was I was asked to come out and start speaking at places. And I said,
Mm.
wow, I am not a speaker. I'm a traffic cop. I go, I don't know. They say put yourself in uncomfortable situations to
Yeah.
grow. I'm about 20 foot tall on stage,
Ooh, yeah.
but it is difficult. But
Yeah.
I put a lot of effort into this. I study a lot. I learn a lot. I still go
Mm.
to negotiator conferences,
Mhm.
because I get this opportunity now to come out and speak to folks, and I want to give them the best knowledge that I can, ever growing. So if they were to talk to a loved one or their friend or whatever else, they could have the
Mhm.
best info they can get to help that individual to get them through this dark time. So
Mhm.
if I'm allowed to do that, and I mean, what an honor to be able to talk about this. It's horrible that we have to do it,
Yeah.
but if we don't, we're going to lose more people. So
Totally.
I take that very, very seriously, and it weighs heavy on me. I used to be 6'5", and now I'm like 5'9". It's crushing me. But if we don't get out there and start talking about this, we're going to lose more and more people. And look what's
Yeah.
going on now. There's going to,
Mm.
unfortunately, I think we're going to have even more suicides.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The helplessness, I think, that everyone is feeling right now, and
yes,
then the trauma that comes with that. Yeah, because we're all literally helpless in so many ways, but then people who have already a helpless situation, either in their living environment or their financial circumstance or their relationship circumstance or whatever, it's just, I feel like COVID is just sort of like a vice, just sort of squishing people tighter and
yeah,
tighter and tighter. And I think that's why people get to that point of suicide, is um, the pain is just so intense. And that's often one of the questions I ask suicidal clients is, can you help me see where you're at, kind of? And in my mind, I'm doing like a risk assessment, but what I say is, do you want the pain to stop, or do you want to die? And most of the time people will say, I just want the pain to stop. And then I'm like, okay, I still gotcha, because then we can work on that. We can figure things out. We can figure out ways to make the pain stop. But when they say, no, I want to die, then it's like, oh, okay, that's, alarm bells. That's
Yeah.
the concerning response. But
And that's what a clinician told me, what you're telling me here. That's fantastic. What a way to talk around things. We don't have to say, well, you're not suicidal. There's ways around that too,
yeah.
to still get to that point.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I want to really get off of this zone where people say, because especially younger kids,
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to talk about suicide or mention the word suicide because it'll put it in their head. No, you are not going to put it in their head. And let's make that clear, and let's say that 5 times.
Oh my God, yes. I've had so many conversations with parents, like of adolescents that I've worked with that are depressed or suicidal. And the parents will be like, I don't want to ask them directly because I don't want to put the concept in their head. And I'm like, dude, it's already in their head. They are thinking about it constantly. You mentioning it is just bringing the elephant out of the corner of the room and making them feel seen. When you don't talk about it, you're compounding the shame and compounding the I am not okay and I'm not, accepted. If anyone knew that I was thinking these things, like, no, call it out. How are you going to do it? Tell me, what are your plans? When, why, how? Like, tell me everything about it. And then it's like, oh, it's not in the darkness anymore. You're bringing it into the light.
And think about it the other way. What if you didn't talk about it and you lost your teenager to suicide?
Totally.
You're going to live with that the rest of your life. I hate to say that. It's true.
Totally.
I've just seen it too many times. We had one last year in my hometown of Novato. 17 years old, lost his life to suicide. Not that the parents did anything wrong. We don't do anything wrong. It's just, man, it's brutal. It's still their act. They did it.
Yes.
The
there's a family that you mentioned in the TED Talk that I wanted to touch on, that I thought was quite interesting. The one that sort of reached out to you afterwards and kind of wanted to make sure that you were okay.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about either that family or other families that when the person was successful in the suicide, how did the families get in touch with you? Like, I'm assuming you have to write a report and then they see your name or something, or like, how do you guys actually match up? And then what is that first conversation like? And
so typically what happens is if we lose someone, the Coast Guard is right there. We call them out when we're doing these. So they're right there in case that person does jump. They pick up the body, they take it over to the docks. We go down and then we wait for the coroner. Now, here's another one for law enforcement, if anyone is listening, just on a side shoot here. If you lose someone to suicide, you are now off the case. If you have enough people to handle it, you're done. You're now a witness. Don't go see that body, because we look at it like a failure. I don't care what you think. Have somebody else go do it. We are now a witness.
Yes.
So getting back to that, when the coroner gets there, they take charge of that individual, and we're done with it. We write a report. Generally, the coroner will make the notification. Now, with Mr. and Mrs. Garber, they were in New Jersey. I lost their son, Jason, after speaking with this brilliant young man for an hour. So I thought the coroner is not going to contact them until they get good ID on him, which may be a day or two. I'm not sure. So I made the call that night out to New Jersey and spoke with the parents. And it was just extremely brutal. And what I was going to do, what I wanted to do, was call the local police department and have them make an in-person notification. Well, Jason, the young man that jumped, had actually sent out an email saying what he was going to do on the bridge, and it went out the time that he was on the bridge. So when I called the local police department out there, the local PD, Jason's father was already at the PD, at the police department. So they made notification there, and I spoke to Mr. Garber on the phone. And I'm fairly emotional, and it was a mess. And I will tell folks, another thing I would tell law enforcement or whoever is in this, if you handle that case, let somebody else talk to the family. And it may say, Briggs, you suck it up, Buttercup, and all this. I'm telling you, because, dude, I've man,
Yeah.
I was airborne infantry. I've done all these macho things.
Yeah.
But as a human being,
Oh,
if
totally.
you care, if you were a good negotiator, this is going to affect you. We don't want to affect you for the rest of your life.
Totally.
But if you don't have some caring and empathy, you're not going to do well as a
Totally.
negotiator, and I don't want you
Totally.
as one.
Totally. And to say that it
Absolutely.
doesn't impact you is
Something wrong.
scary. That's you're sociopath then, because
We are not a RoboCop. You know?
yeah, exactly. And that's what I always think, like, you can't hear these stories and you can't have these experiences and it not impact you. It should impact you. Like, it should make you cry. It should make you think about them constantly. Like, that is being human, you know?
And I will put it right back to you, because when these folks are 4 feet from you, probably 6 feet now,
Yeah.
talking to you,
Yeah.
the only difference between what I did and you did is we were at the scene.
Yes.
You are replaying everything in your mind, and your scene was occurring. So you're there. It is the same thing. Maybe mine's a little more dangerous. It could happen right now, but it's the same. So you folks take away that vicarious trauma. It's going through. Yeah.
Totally.
So I spoke to Mr. Garber that evening, and it didn't, it as well as it could be, but he knew I was upset. He never blamed me. I think he's a large man. He's a big guy with a big voice. And then he went home and told his wife, and they called me back at the office, and I could hear her scream in the background, and it was just brutal. I mean, how could it be any other thing? But the next day, when I went back to my office, we agreed to speak the following day, and I had a crappy night, of course. I went back, and I started my shift at 2 p.m. for swing shift. When I got to the office, hey, Sergeant Briggs, you have a phone call. It's like, here we go. I'm trying to get emotionally cool for this. And I get on the phone, and it turns out to be their family rabbi, and they're back in New Jersey. So I start talking to him, and very nice man. And he goes, Kevin, you want to know why I'm calling you? I go, yes, sir. He goes, the family's worried about you. I go, oh, geez, I lost it on the phone. That was a mess. I go, they lost their kid, but they're worried about me. I go, oh, my God, it's too much. So, yeah, and wow, talk about full circle and people caring for each other.
Yeah.
So this
The
poor
other
young man just lost his life to suicide, and he was brilliant. He was so interesting to speak to. It's just, he just couldn't take it.
The other people that you have lost, did you ever get in touch with their families, or was the Garbers the only one that you kind of had a relationship, I guess, with, or did anyone else reach out? Oh, really?
One person, and I reached out to them, but it's a little bit of a story.
Okay.
But I don't recommend officers to do so, because we want those people to get past this day. Tell me that isn't the darkest day they've had.
Seriously.
So I don't want them to see me, sight, smell, sound, whatever, to be a trigger for anything else. And it's actually none of my business. I hope you succeed, is all I can say. It's none of my business what happens to them. I hope things go well.
Yeah.
But I was asked by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to receive this Lifesavers Award, but they wanted somebody who I had saved, and how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Somebody I'd saved to present the award. And this is at the Lincoln Center in New York City, super high-end stuff.
Wow.
One, I didn't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't like that stuff. Just let me be in my corner.
Yeah.
But they went through my lieutenant and captain and got everybody involved. So now I got to do it. And they kept asking me, is there somebody you saved? We could come on. And I didn't want to know. I know.
Yeah.
But I had a letter from a gentleman I spoke with years prior, named Kevin Berthia. And there's actually a photo out there that people could look up, and they'll see he's an African-American man over the rail, and I'm talking with him on the bridge.
Wow.
And he's standing on a little bitty pipe about that big, so that I-beam parallels the bridge except for around the two towers. And around the two towers is just this little bitty pipe about this big. And he's standing on that for an hour and a half while I'm speaking with him.
Wow.
And on the other side, that's nothing, 220 feet down. But I spoke with him, and he did finally come back over. So
wow.
It was some years later, and I had a letter from his mother that she had written to me a couple of weeks after the event. So I had that letter. I still have the letter.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I will go over to Oakland and see if she still lives there and go through her to see if he would like to meet with me. So I went over there, reached out to her. And once she figured out who I was, gave me a big hug, and it was really cool. She reached out to him. I did not see him until we met in New York.
Wow.
And I think this was 2014 when this happened, I think.
Wow.
But so, or maybe it was either late 2013 or 2014.
Yeah.
So we meet, and it was really, really cool. And actually, he said that is his second rebirth when he said, because he hated that photo of him over that rail showing a black man at a very, very weak point. Because living in Oakland, you don't show a weakness.
Yes.
That's a tough area.
Yes.
So after we both went up on stage and spoke, and after he spoke, he got a standing ovation. And he said that just showed him there that he could use that photo and his experiences to help others. So we get to speak on stage from time to time, and it's so much fun. There's no ego. We make it about the audience, what do we bring to them, and it's really, really cool. So we're hoping to do some more work together.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
We cross so many barriers.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Wow.
Other than that, no, I did not reach out to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I handled about 4 to 6 cases a month for about 10 years. A lot of people.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it's no claim to fame or anything. It's terrible.
Yeah. And what would you do for yourself in the moment? I know sometimes, like, if I have had a client having a panic attack with me in front of me, or if we're talking about a trauma and they start to get really distressed as they start to like think about it. I have some things like that I do for myself. I do like belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, and really just put my feet, like I even will sit up like this and put my feet firmly on the floor. So I'm just very grounded and just kind of get myself very present and just still is kind of what I say in my head is just be here, and just focusing on my presence and not what am I going to say next, but just focusing and just getting really still. What did you do in those moments when you were opposite such intense and extreme crisis? What would you do or say in your body and in your mind to center and to get through it?
One thing I would do with folks is after we were speaking for a while, because I think, in my opinion, that they have like the horse, like the blinders on. And maybe I try to slow my speech down a lot because I'm thinking so many things are coming on. For one, they're looking out at the water and they got so many things going on in their head. And then you hear this other guy you've never seen before is throwing a bunch of stuff at you.
Yep.
So I'm kind of thinking about them and I see, oh my God, he's looking down at the water or she's looking down at the water. But if I can get their attention for some time and then go, you know what? I need to take a break. I don't want to give you a break, but I'm only going to take some steps back if you promise me not to do anything before I come back up here. And that does a whole lot. And if they say yes, I'm giving it's just their verbal promise, so to speak. I'm going to walk back about 10 feet and try not to look their way. A lot of times I'm trying to see, are they looking still at me or are they looking down at the water? Because that's a bad sign. That gives them time. But for me, it gives me time. All right, I can take some bigger breaths. I can try to slow down more. What's some information that I have that I might be able to use? What am I missing? Can I talk to another officer and say, what do you think? Did you hear any of this? Because I like to do these solo. And it doesn't have to be Kevin Briggs. I don't care who it is. If I'm not building that rapport, I'm going to get somebody else in. When I start to make it the Kevin Briggs show is when I blew it. I don't want that. No. So if I can, if we have people available. But I'll take a step back for a few minutes. And like you did, just take some big breaths and then start, okay, look around a bit, stretch your neck out, look around. It's not just poof, it's everything. How's this day and what's going on? So, and then get their permission to go back up and then try to make that connection again. Hey, is it okay if I come back up? So I'm still connected. And even though I may be going through a whole lot of stuff on the inside, I did get some breaths in. I did look around away from this. Maybe I saw somebody smile that cool. There is some people having a good day out here. But that's for that. And then at home, I've had 2 panic attacks. I never even knew what they were. I had no clue what a panic attack was. Oh my God, did they hit hard?
Yeah.
One was on an airplane.
Oh no.
It was terrible, absolutely terrible. But I studied a bunch and I learned about it. I haven't had one since. It's been probably at least 2 years or so.
Wow.
I had them within a year of each other, and they were terrible.
You think you're gonna die? It's the worst feeling ever. Yeah.
I was sweating. I was sweating. I'm just sitting down.
And it's so hard too because you don't know what it is. you know.
No,
And yeah, so many people present like at the ER with what they think is a heart attack, and then they're like,
that's what I
no, you're just
thought,
having a panic attack. Yeah, that's what so
because
many
I
people
had the
say to
heart
me.
attack,
Yeah,
and everything was fine. I was going home from presentation. I wasn't nervous going to something. There was
yeah.
no reason for it. It just came up on me.
Mm,
Um, but that breathing really,
yeah,
really helps. And what are you
yeah.
doing daily? That little dog sitting
Yes.
on the pillow
Yeah.
there, that's a big one.
Yes.
What do you? I'm always big on that. Is
Yeah.
what are you doing for yourself?
Yeah.
You know, self care is not
Yes.
selfish. So that's important. I think, how can we help others? How can we give them our best if we're not at our best?
Totally
Or at
agree.
least the best that we can be. I'm
Yeah.
the best that I can be with a big
Yeah.
belly right now. So
I'm oh God, I'm so with you on that because the analogy I always use is like a cup. Like you have to fill your cup because then the excess is what spills over into other people, into your kids, into your partner, into your friends. You have to fill up your cup first, and through
yeah,
self-care. And yeah, it's not selfish. It's how you help others is by filling your cup up.
right. Exactly.
Yeah. I have so enjoyed speaking to you today. I would love to do it again because I've just got such a insight, I guess, into, and I think a lot of the things that you have shared are really practical and helpful for people when they, because we all encounter people who are suffering, you know, we all
Right.
encounter people who are struggling. So just giving people the kind of scripts and tools to how to help is awesome. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts on what you're, you know, like, so the podcast is titled, you know, Tell the Others, and it's, you know, things that have shaped you personally, professionally, that you kind of have learned that you go, man, I just want to tell the others about this so that either they don't have to suffer or they, um, I don't know, whatever. But
Yeah.
what would be your nuggets of like your legacy, I guess, of the things that you want to really impart to people?
What comes to mind is my mantra for one is listen to understand. Those three words, they mean a lot, but there's so many things around that. Listen to understand what is going on,
Yeah.
not to reply, not to judge, but to be able to take everything in. And if you were having a conversation with someone, one of these high-end conversations where you think somebody may be suicidal, maybe they're not.
Mm,
Not everybody's suicidal. We know that.
mm,
Maybe they're just going through a tough time. But do this conversation somewhere where they are comfortable, not in a coffee shop. Because think about it, if it was you, hey, I've been noticing all these different things. You're not going to do something stupid, are you? No.
mm,
Think about if it was you. Would you want somebody to come up and say, hey, can we have a chat tonight? Are you home? Can I come over there? Whether it's a kid and you do it in their bedroom,
mhm,
whatever that may be, but to be there for them and say, you know what? I want to let you know I'm here for you. Have you been having thoughts of suicide? If it gets to that, most of the
mhm,
time I probably won't even get to that, but I just
mhm,
want to let you know that I'm here for you. Have you been
mhm,
having thoughts of suicide? No, yes,
mhm,
whatever that may be. Sometimes people are going to say no a lot, and actually
mhm,
they were thinking about it. A whole
mhm.
another talk, a whole another hour on it. So, but
Yeah.
but just to be there and say, you know what, I just want to let you know, man, it appears and it looks like you've been going through some struggles. I'm here for you.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
listen to understand what's going on.
Yeah. Because that I think would be a big thing with the bridge, of that the people who are on the bridge feel like I don't have anyone, and that you were then that person. You were the one who said, I'm here for you, even though you were a stranger. But it was just that one person who said, I'm here for you. And that was the difference, I guess, between life and death, huh, for a lot of those folks.
And that's the biggest thing, is being there for that individual. Now, why did it take to come up to what I call this stage 4 cancer of a bridge at times?
Yeah.
That's what Kevin Berthea. I asked folks to
Mm.
go and check out that photo. I wish I had it printed out so I could show you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I'll
it
link to it in the show notes. I'll put it in the show
perfect.
notes. I'll link to
Yes.
it. Yeah.
So when
Cool.
you see him, that gentleman
Hmm.
came back over after an hour and a half of me speaking with him. And another thing, you'll see me standing above him, looking down. Generally, I do not do that. I want to get at eye level or below
Hmm.
them, so we're looking like this. But
Hmm.
he was about to come back over then, so I wanted to help him come back.
Hmm.
But I asked him, as I did every single person that I spoke to, once I started getting more knowledge, is when he came back over that rail, I said, Kevin, I congratulated him, and I said, what did I do that helped this situation, and what did I do that wasn't so good, that hurt the situation? And he took
Mm.
just a few seconds and he said, You let me speak and you listened. So it's exactly what you just said, you know, allow folks to talk. That's all this guy wanted to do, was to talk about this. And then I focused on what was meaningful to him, which was his child.
God, how profound is that?
Yeah.
Just listening.
It
People
was no,
underestimate
I could
that,
have all the
don't
training
they?
in the world, but if I'm not listening, it doesn't do any good.
Totally. Totally. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you so
Absolute
much
pleasure.
for sharing your journey, your personal journey, your professional journey. I've found this absolutely, I don't know, comforting. There's something cool about knowing people like you exist and have been in law
Oh, well, thank you.
enforcement, you know, and knowing that, you know, you were there patrolling for such a long time and looking after people. Yeah. Yeah, thanks
Cool.
for being here. I appreciate your
Oh,
time.
it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks.